Good evening, everybody. This is the Columbus City Council meeting. The date is May 28th, 2025. The time is 6 p.m. Just for the record, I want to state who's all here for AI. And we'll start with Brian, from our engineer, JW, the Public Works Director. All the council members are present. Our city administrator, our assistant city administrator, and Ellie, our planning.
Assistant planner.
Assistant planning. I always think you're the planner. I can't get it right. But anyway, the first thing on the agenda is to say the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody stand up, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There's going to be a change tonight in the agenda. Item number C, under C, we're going to move the Lions Club lease up to number 2 after the public forum, and equipment share will go drop down below that. And first thing on the agenda here is a motion. Anybody have a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Scott. I move to approve the agenda for the May 28th, 2025 City Council meeting with the addition of items B4, B5, and D7 as presented by the email distribution and handouts to the council, and including moving item number C3 to item number C2.
Is there a second?
Ron, there was one other thing we wanted to do too, and that's move the planning commission report to right after the public forum.
Okay, right. I'm sorry. That's correct. Just for the record, as Jack said, we're going to move the planning commission report prior, well, not after public forum, but after the Lions Club, correct, Jack?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Do we have a second on the motion for the adoption of the agenda?
This is Rob, all second.
We got a motion on the floor, seconded. Is there any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Jenny?
Jenny, I.
Scott, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. We'll go down to the item B. Well, we just did that. We'll go down, yeah, did we?
No,
Yeah.
we
No.
We didn't do the consent agenda? No,
No.
we didn't. We'll go to the consent agenda. And anybody like to make a motion on that?
So this is Janet. I would move to approve the consent agenda, agenda items 1 through 5, with the minor grammatical changes that I discussed with the staff prior to the meeting on minutes for February 26th, 2025, and March 12th, 2025.
Is there a second?
This is Jenny, I second.
We have a motion. It's been seconded. Anybody have any discussion, any questions? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Jenny?
Jenny, I.
Scott, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. We're going to go to item C, the presentations for items for the city council actions. We're going to start with the public forum. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to get up and make any comments to the council? Yes, sir. You want to come up and sit at the table and give your name and address? Yep. Thank you.
I'm Rob Osterberg, and
Kathy Osterberg.
we're our address is 14063 Lake Drive Northeast. I would just like to thank Janet and Ron for coming out to our house and visiting with us Monday night, and kind of going over our concerns that we presented to the Planning Commission a few weeks ago, which was basically the hours and the noise, which kind of go hand in hand, the garbage and the lighting, the amount of traffic, and, kind of the eyesore with the booms in the air and containment of the equipment. But I also just wanted to comment, I read through the agenda packet, and I just wanted to make a few comments there. First of all, I'd like to commend whoever on the city council called the Scott County Sheriff's Office to see if there was any noise complaints on their office down there in Elko New Market. So, no, that was great. Good job. But me and Kathy went down 2 Sundays ago and visited that site. The reason there wasn't any noise complaints, there was no residences around there, anywhere near to be seen. But what we did notice was a lot of boom trucks, probably 30 plus is what I counted, up in the air, which is kind of a concern to us as we've expressed in the past. And the other thing I wanted to mention, we were talking about the noise at the Planning Commission, and kind of the pat answer with noise with reverse beepers is that it's an OSHA requirement. I did a little research on that, and it didn't take very long. And on the backup beepers, and according to the Minnesota OSHA does not specifically require the use of reversing beepers on trucks. However, OSHA mandates that employers provide a safe work environment free from recognized hazards, which may include the use of audible warnings such as reverse beepers. But then it also went on to talk about alternatives to that, such as backup cameras and reverse lights, etc., which are acceptable and legal. So I just wanted to bring that up, I know you've got a lot on the agenda, so we're not going to go into any details on anything more. We kind of discussed that, so.
Yeah, we just wanted to stop and again thank the council for reaching out and just making sure that the rest of the council knows that this is, we are really close to this business. And when we went out there, first of all, you had to drive a long way to even get there. It was very, very out in the middle of nowhere. I'm going to correct one thing. There are residents there. It's a cemetery. So there are no houses, nowhere even close to it. So we're very concerned with the noise outside of the 7 to 5 o'clock that they're in. They've mentioned that if they have to have pickup, of some of the equipment, it could be as early as 4 a.m. And that's just not acceptable.
And the one other thing I want to mention, then we'll let you guys go on. I know you've got a lot on your plate tonight. I read through the agenda packet, like I said, and I know Michael Schmidt had sent in a letter on the 23rd talking about how they were going to kind of lay their equipment, how they kind of stage that. To me, after reading that, it's basically leaving it open to where they can put any of this equipment anywhere in their yard. And our biggest concern is looking out our front picture window. I don't want to see a bunch of boom trucks sticking up in front. And like we discussed, Ron and Janet, with you guys, there's plenty of space in that south enclosure right directly behind the building for the stuff that's going to be above the fence, And I guess that's our ask, is to drill down more on that. Because reading that, I thought it was very vague and open to anything, So.
Okay.
I think that's all we have.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Can we ask questions, Mayor?
We're going to be talking.
It's all right later.
Very good.
Yeah.
And we'll stay.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else out in the audience want to step up? Seeing nobody, anybody online that would like to make a statement or comment to the council? Hearing none, we'll go on to the next item under C. Like I said, we switched this around tonight, so the next item will be the Lions Club lease. Lions Club lease. So, Jeannie, you want to come up and sit at the... Give your name, Gina.
Oh, I'm Gina Shervin with the Columbus Lions.
Richard Howard, from Treasurer for the Columbus Lions.
Okay. Jack, you want to take it over?
Yeah, I'll give a little report here, and I've discussed some of this stuff already with Gina and Dick, but at the May 6, 2025 City Council Workshop meeting, Council discussed a request from the Lions Club for an extension of their lease space in the Public Works Building for meeting room facilities and storage space. Current lease expires October 31st, 2025, and is for 2 separate spaces totaling approximately 1,053 square feet. The outline of this is exhibited in Attachment 1 of your packet. In November 2024, the city, with approval of the Lions, reduced the lease space by approximately 120 square feet in the cold storage area to create an office for the Anoka County deputies. With the decrease in rental space, the city reduced the lease amount from $1,408 to $1,253 for the 5th and last year of the agreement. As a result of the renewal discussion, Council requested that staff provide additional information as to the methodology for the determination of the initial rate set for the 2021-2025 lease, the justification for the inflationary increase per year, and the rationale for the proposed annual rental rates. Staff reviewed the records that are available for the rental calculations for the 2021-2025 lease. There was little information relating to the matter in which the initial rental fee was determined. The worksheet numbers, which are included in Attachment 3 of your packet, do not match the rents on the current lease agreement. Based on the information on file, the 2021 rental rate of $1,250 has no correlation with the worksheet numbers exhibited in Attachment 3. Staff could find no explanation as to the reasoning for the rental rates established for the current lease. As for the basis of the selection of 3% as an annual inflationary adjustment, the following factors were considered. CenterPoint's gas prices increase could range from 2.4 to 3.75% for 2025. They did submit a request to the Public Utilities Commission for a 2.9 to 5.4% increase. Connexus Energy 2025 budget includes a general rate increase of approximately 3% after holding their rates flat for several years. Building maintenance costs are very unpredictable, and a 3% increase on these products and services is a conservative estimate at this point. And as far as insurance, we do not have any of our quotes yet for 2025. Rent costs are subject to many unforeseen variables that are beyond the control of the landlord and the renter. The impacts of these fluctuations make it complicated to assign a precise break-even cost for rent that is equitable to both parties. The city's goal in this process is not to make a profit, but to ensure that city costs are covered and the rental charges within reasonable variances for the renter. Staff is proposing that the city renew the lease of the space exhibited in Attachment 1 containing 1,053 square feet to the Columbus Lions at a rent of $1,200 for the November 1st, 2025 to October 31st, 2026, and this amount increased annually at the rate of 3% until the lease would expire on October 31st, 2030. At this time, no other changes to the lease have been requested by the Lions. The proposed rent for 2026 is $53 less than the current payment, and even with a 3% annual increase over the 5-year term of the lease, the 2030 payment would only be $102 more than the current 2025 expense. So that's where we're coming up with this number, and at this time, staff would request that that be approved as the lease agreement for the cost of the space with the Lions Club.
Thank you, Jack. Is there anybody on the council who has a comment or question?
So this is Janet. I have a couple. First of all, I went back because I remember when we discussed this, and actually in the minutes, they explained how they got to that number, which was Elizabeth saying, I think we need to go 10% higher than what the last year's rent was, and that's how they did it. And it was actually during the attorney's report, so I'm assuming you guys had something to do with that. So all those figures that you had provided us, which I think were interesting, I think that was setting the stage for the 5-year lease prior to that, and then when that ended, they increased it by 10% and with a 3% inflation. My question is, how often do you use that space? I mean, you're not there every day, correct?
We're not there every day. We have official meetings twice a month.
Okay,
But we use it for other things, like this weekend, we have softball tournaments, so we are there from last night until Sunday, every day, doing things. Fall Fest, we're there for.
yeah.
a
But
week.
it's, the reason I'm asking is because some of the utility stuff, I mean, if you're not there, I think putting it out there that we do a 3% increase seems more than we should, because, I mean, electric, you have to be there, turn on the lights, use things to create an expense there, and if you're only there 2 days a month typically, unless there's an event, then I think that might be excessive.
And we did take that into partial consideration. Like I says, it's not a precise science. We did take the utility cost, and if you base it on square feet, they occupy 6% of the building. But for the gas and the electrical costs, we reduced that to 3% in figuring the averages out.
No, I followed how you came up with it. I just think that if you're only occupying the space and using it 2 days a month on average, 3 days maybe if you include the events, you're not utilizing the utilities like the rest of the building is being utilized, where people are there 5, 6 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day. So I think the number that you arrived at to start off with seems right. I just think that instead of a 3%, I'd go with a 2% inflation. That would be my recommendation.
You're saying drop it from 3% to 2%.
Correct.
Right. Like Jack said, it's a hard number to
No, I know.
figure out. Like I said, I think in our workshop or the last meeting we had, we didn't want to make money on this deal. We just
Right.
want to break even. So,
And then, there's other ways to do it too, even if you want to reduce it to there. We can take a look at it each year, and if we're going too high or too low, we can always readjust that.
Could you put, this is Rob, could you put some sort of language about, not to exceed 3%? If it's lower, we could assume that it's lower, right? But we wouldn't go higher than what we set forth here in this, kind of to accommodate what you're saying.
Yeah, and
That's a
I get where you're coming from, though, like as far as.
There's two ways to look at this. Number one, I think what we're doing is essentially justifying the use of this space to the public for a non-public use. But the other thing, the way to look at it is, if the lines weren't there, we wouldn't be getting anything for it. So there's a number of ways we can do this, and either one of them is probably fair.
Are we charging Anoka County for the space they're utilizing?
We are not. We can charge them, but they'll back charge us on the
Yeah,
contract when they
I know, I
review it.
figured that, yeah. So, the other part that I wasn't quite sure is when it came to the maintenance of the building, how that might affect the space that they're in, because I don't know what constituted the cost of those maintenance things, if they were, things that don't really improve their space but had to be done, or if they were repairs, and we don't have to get into that. I just think that,
I'll just give you a quick overview. The way we kind of looked at that is the building maintenance costs are going to be really reflective, like, say, on the HVAC equipment, the wells, the water and sewer, anything that affects the whole building, and they would benefit from that. So again, there's a number of ways to cut that and try to get it more precise, but it's going to take a lot of work, and I think whatever we come up with is going to be a reasonable amount and a better way to do this than trying to nail it down to the penny.
well, I like your idea. I mean, we could say that we start at 2%, and you can review what the real costs are and have a not to exceed of 3%. Everybody,
are you making a motion?
no, I'm just looking for a reaction.
Yeah, this is Scott. I mean, utilities are utilities. You got to heat and cool the place whether you're there or not. So I think whether it's occupied or not, you still got to pay utilities. But I agree that, 2% may be the starting point. I don't disagree with you on that.
Yeah, and I think that's true, but it's not true of all utilities. I mean, if you're not there, yes, you have to heat it, and there's a fan on a blower that might blow the warm air or the cool air through, but you're not turning on and off lights, and you're certainly not using things like, garage door openers and whatever else uses electricity out in your neck of the woods, so.
Yeah.
So then I can make the motion if you'd like, if everybody's ready.
Well, that's just any, Jenny, you have anything?
No, I think 2% seems fair. Again, we're not trying to make money off of the lines, and we appreciate everything you do for the city as well.
So then I would say, I, Janet, move to approve the extension of the Lions Club lease of space in the City Public Works Building as exhibited in attachment 1 of the staff report for this item for an additional 5-year term at an annual rate of $1,200 for the first year and increasing 2% per year for the remainder of the lease with a not-to-exceed inflationary value of 3% depending on utility rates and maintenance, et cetera.
This is Rob, I'll second.
We got a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Rob?
Rob, aye.
Janet, aye.
Scott, aye.
Jenny, I.
And Ron, aye. So the motion passes unanimously. And we'll move on to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you, Lion.
Thank you.
Richard?
We appreciate it.
We appreciate you.
Yes, we do.
I said earlier that the agenda was going to be changed tonight, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the reports from the Planning Commission from last week. Janet was the liaison there, and she will go over that, and after that, we will go to the equipment share PUD CUP.
So my report's pretty short and sweet, and it really kind of does lead into the equipment share, so I think that this was a good call to move things around. So the Planning Commission, as you know, because we passed it in our consent agenda, elected a new chair, and that was Robin Wood, and a new vice chair, which is Susan Bausch. So those are the 2 new officers. Robin's been on the Planning Commission he was placed there in September of 2023, so he's coming up onto 2 years, so he's well experienced, and I think they were excited to take on those new roles. There was also a public hearing on the Northwest Quad for the preliminary and final plat, and there was no comments on that, and there was really not any discussion, and they passed that. And now, is that going to come back to us, Eleanor, or does that just stop with the Planning Commission?
Yeah, so since it has a public hearing, it does have to go back to the Planning Commission for a discussion.
Okay, yeah, I was a little confused because they approved it, and then I thought, I wrote that down in my notes, maybe I wrote them down wrong.
Yeah, I think they passed a motion to continue discussion next week.
Got it, okay. So we'll be seeing that coming forward, but that's city property, so Eleanor was the one that was in the hot seat for that and did a fine job. And then most of the time was spent talking about the equipment share CUP PUD. There wasn't a lot of discussion, although they were concerned as well about the noise. And one of the suggestions that was brought forth to them by Ms. Hahn was to request a noise study after they've been on the property for 6 months, and then if the noise from the backup beepers and moving things around exceeds what the federal standards are, then we'd have to take some action at that point. And just for the record, could you maybe explain what those standards are, just so, because I think that's going to guide some of our discussion going forward here tonight?
Absolutely. So the federal and state pollution control agencies set forth noise pollution standards that are based on the distances from different types of uses. So this would be primarily based on the distance from the legal non-conforming residences that we're concerned about. For this area, I believe that the maximum decibel limit for daytime use, which the standard is from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., is 60 decibels, and that's measured as an average over an hour. And then during nighttime use, it would be 50 decibels, also averaged out over an hour. And that's just what the state guidelines for noise control are.
Okay, thank you. So I think they did approve the CUP PUD with the addition of that condition, and now we get to talk about it. And so I'm done with my Planning Commission report. If we want to talk about this, I have plenty more to say on the topic.
Okay, now, done with that, we're going on to the equipment share PUD CUP. And as Janet said, the If you read in your reports here what the Planning Commission's recommendations are, and they put a few conditions in here. I just state a few things here in the beginning. Me and Janet did stop out there Memorial Day, Monday night, and talked with the Osterbergs about their concerns. And looking at the property, I think there's a lot that, one of them is the lights. The neighbor even next door to the Osterbergs, James Hogg, is that how you pronounce his name? He has lights that shine into his bedroom all night from the place, but I'm sure you could resolve that by just shrouding them down or turning them off in the back area or something like that and looking at it. I also think that the 10-foot fences that they have there are all made out of metal, and it really creates an echo chamber in there. But that was empty when we were there, so don't know what it's going to cause when it fills up. And, you know, Jack, I know sometimes we can open it up to a comment from the, or Megan, we can open up to a comment from the applicant for a question.
Absolutely. In particular, you can open up this matter to be heard by the applicant and not take additional public comment, should you so choose.
Okay. I just have one question, and maybe Rob knows it. Do these big lifts, are they required to be up all the time? Who can answer that?
I can answer that for you.
Could you give your name and?
Yeah, my name is Michael Schmidt. I live in Wisconsin. My address is W308S8845 Woodland Drive in Mugwanago. So the reason the lifts are up in the air is twofold. One, it's for safety and security. If somebody were to climb the fence, get in the yard somehow, having them boomed up keeps them from being able to get into the basket and cause harm or danger to themselves. Well, honestly, there's really just, that's really the biggest reason, to be honest with you. And beyond that, it's also just the idea that when we have them boomed up, we're able to create more space. Some of those booms that we have can extend out to, say, 135, 150 feet. The initial section is maybe 30 or 40 feet long. If we lay that down, one, we create a situation where somebody could run into it, and two, it obviously takes up extra yard space where sometimes, and it's probably seen in our Lakeville location, we'll back these in right up to each other so that we can stack them more or less, so we can have 2 or 3 of them in line.
Jack, do you want to show that picture I emailed to you? Because I think that might be helpful, so people get a sense of what this looks like when you've got 30 of them up.
So, and this is Rob, and while we're waiting, I think it's more like Mike's saying, it's more just to get it out of the way. I don't think they have to be up. As far as a security standpoint, you can still control that from the ground. There's a panel on the side where you can turn the power on and put the boom up and down from the ground. So as far as a security standpoint, if they got a universal key, they're still going to be able to get into that boom. So it's kind of to me, it's more of a keeping things up in the air. When we would be on construction sites, we'd put them up for the sake of we were leaving stuff in the basket that we didn't want to get stolen or something of that nature. So.
Well, there's no way to lower them in an emergency without power? Or?
I believe you'd have to turn the key on. Mike, is that correct? Maybe there's a release valve on the hydraulics, but.
Yeah, I was going to say most of the units you'd have to turn them on, but there is a relief valve in the hydraulic pump. If you had to, you could certainly bring it down in an emergency situation.
Yeah, a little more cumbersome, but.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is Scott. Mike, a question for you. Do you have a corporate policy or procedure that requires you to keep them up? Or is that just best practice on a local level?
It's best practice. And again, it also allows us to efficiently use our yard space. If we were to lay them all down, suddenly we're going to need twice as much yard space as we had before. They obviously, like I said, they take up a lot of space when you have that boom straight out. or stowed down. So it's, the base of a unit might be 12 feet, 14 feet. With the boom down, you're talking probably closer to 60 feet, 50 feet, somewhere in there. I'm sorry, about 45 to 50 feet to be realistic. So obviously it changes our storage capacity quite a bit to have that down.
Can I ask a question on that too?
Yes.
So Mike, this is Janet. On the off-season, say January, I imagine there's not a lot of people renting those. Do you put them down then, or are they up all the time no matter what the season is?
Well, during that time, obviously, we're going to have more in our yard at that time. So we need to maximize our ability to use the ground space.
So they're up even in the wintertime?
Correct, yes.
So this is a picture that the Osterbergs shared with me of their site in Lakeview. So this is what I don't want us to have visible from Lake Drive. So this is what I'm hoping we don't see as people are driving down Lake Drive, because that's a lot of them and it looks really terrible.
Mike, do they have to be totally all the way up?
No, they don't. They don't have to be all the way up. It's again, a way to maximize our real estate that we've got.
What's the lowest they can be? I guess what I'm saying, without being them down, having them down, I'm looking at some of those, and some of them got the piston sticking out a ways. Is it just up in the air and that's that?
No, I mean, it's variable how we have them set. And obviously in the Lakeville location, there aren't any concerns of this. So they're able to just boom them up to whatever extent they need. We can certainly do what we can to bring them down a little bit, but no matter what we do, we're going to be over the 10-foot fence. I mean, the unit itself, the back of some of those units, off the top of my head, I want to say are probably already around 8 or 9 feet high at least. So, if we have a 10-foot fence around that building, which is what it sounds like we have, we're going to be above the fence line. How far, it's going to depend on how many units we need to stack. But to the conversation of the layout of the yard that I mentioned in the email that I had sent late last week or late last week, it's all blurring together with the holiday. I apologize. We have, like I mentioned, we have a flow based on how we keep things efficient. And really, with the concern of the sound, we're trying to keep the equipment that's going to be going out the following day or the next day. We want to keep that as far forward to the fence as possible in the front of the yard. And let our trucks stage up there. That will keep noise down for the Osterbergs to the best of our ability. I did some measurements on Google Earth. It's 560 feet approximately from the front of that, or from that fence in the front of our yard to their approximate front door. It was hard to see where their front door was on Google Earth, but I did my best. And running some calculations on sound, to touch base on that real quick. The loudest thing that we have, it's going to vary from brand of machine to other brands, but the loudest, according to my technicians and people I've talked to in my company, is about 90 decibels. And that's just the backup siren is all that is. It has to be louder than the engine, and that is actually an OSHA requirement. I'm not sure, Rob, where your information was coming from. I know trucks are probably different. Pickup trucks, I noticed when you'd mentioned that, it did mention trucks. This is equipment, and obviously when it goes onto a construction site, not just anywhere in general, it is required. I was actually looking it up while the other discussions were going on. But our loudest measurement is 90 decibels. That, again, is the siren. Some of them are adjustable on some of the brands. I learned of that just last week. So we certainly can adjust those down on the brands that do allow that to help. But with 90 decibels and looking at a decibel rating chart, I have pulled up here on my computer right now, 95 decibels at 1 meter away, at 420 feet away, 128 meters, 420 feet away, it's down to 53 decibels, which means that's a 95 decibels. It means at 90 decibels, we're going to be below 50 decibels with our backup sirens at well over 420 feet. So not to sidetrack everything, but it all kind of goes together. But that's why we want to stage the equipment that's going to be going out the next day as far forward as possible to be as neighborly as we can in this situation. The equipment that's going to be near the back of the yard may be equipment that just isn't as popular, doesn't go out as often. Really, once we get the equipment in, we can start to see where we can lay things out better. But we do have the 4 different stages of equipment that we attempt to locate in different parts of the yard to keep our efficiency going. You know, obviously, we drive more revenue, the more efficient we are. Our idea is that we want to get 3 truckloads a day per truck if possible. Without being efficient, typically we would run 2.
This is Jenny. Hi, Mike. One question for you. Can you talk about the frequency or how often you have vehicles and what kinds of vehicles coming in and out, let's say on your, maybe one of your busier weeks or busier days?
So, you know, there's going to be some contractors that come in with their pickup trucks, trailers, maybe even some of their own delivery trucks that come in and pick up equipment. But most of the time it's going to be our trucks, which will be pickup trucks for management and sales, our service trucks for our service team, which are typically F450 or F550 size units, and then our delivery trucks. As far as frequency goes, it's hard to say. I'm trying to think of one of our locations. So Milwaukee, we have a location. We run 5 drivers, 5 trucks out of that on a daily basis. Those trucks all make 2 to 3 runs each. And then we typically have, I would say 3 to 5 other trucks that probably come throughout the day to pick up equipment randomly.
Okay, I think, this is Jenny again. I think one of my major concerns is that unfortunately you do have residents living very close to you. And so I think the frequency for me is also kind of a challenge. And so I don't know how the rest of the council feels about that, but I think in, you know, being respectful to the residents that do live very near to the business, not only the volume of equipment, but the frequency of the vehicles coming in and out may be a disturbance to the neighbors that are obviously living in and near you.
Mike, I have a question. These bigger trucks, are they flatbeds, tractor trailers?
Yes, yeah. Low boys and beaver tails are what we typically run, flatbeds.
When you pull, looking at the lot, when you pull that in, it's kind of tight in there a little, isn't it?
Not in that yard. I mean, we have a much smaller yard. Honestly, my Milwaukee yard is tiny, and compared to what's there in Columbus, you know, we run 2.5 acres in Milwaukee, and the building is smack dab in the middle of the lot. And we run, like I said, we'll have 5 or 6 trucks in that yard at a time. During the heyday, you know, first thing in the morning, maybe we have a customer show up early, wants to get something, and our guys are still loading up equipment at that point. So with the yard in Columbus being much larger, it should not be much of an issue like that.
So that's one, I know we just keep rattling these questions off, but so when you start staging and reading your literature and what I heard the Planning Commission, so stuff you're not using is going to be to the far east, up against Osterbauer's.
Potentially, it doesn't necessarily have to go that way. We could certainly put it to the southeast by the building there. You know, again, I was only there in August, and I have the couple of pictures from the flyer of the building that we had. So I'm trying to do this all off of memory. You know, looking at Google Maps a little bit too, obviously, has been a little bit of a help, but not necessarily. And even, you know, we're trying to be as neighborly as possible in this. I'll be honest with you. The discussions have already happened that obviously that road that we share, we will be clearing the snow on. If there's any issues with, you know, the road getting, you know, tore up a little bit from us using it because of our utilization, we are obviously and honestly going to be the ones that are going to be taking care of that. So those are things that we've already talked about, making sure that, you know, we're going to do what we can to be as neighborly as possible. And as far as the storage of the equipment goes in the back of the yard, you know, I would much rather put shorter equipment back there myself if at all possible. And I think it will be mostly possible to be able to do that. Things that are ready to go, but maybe don't have an order yet. You know, if we can put it back there and it's not going to be seen because of the fence, then great. Yeah, that's a much better picture than I have. For some reason, I can't find one with the fence on it. So yeah. So again, that front fence area is where we would like to stage our ready to go out equipment, trying to keep it as far as possible from the Osterbergs. And then with that back fence, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to put boom lifts back there. We could honestly tuck boom lifts there where all those trucks are to the, I believe that's southeast, right next to the building.
There was another concern about dust. Do you think there'd be a lot of driving around in that Class 5 area?
So I think we're going to be driving equipment on that dirt, obviously, to park it and bring it back out if it's going to go out on rent. But most of the work is going to be probably done on the concrete pad. So I would think that dust is going to be fairly minimal. And to be honest with you, oddly enough, we rent sweepers. So we would be able to stay on top of the dust that's on the concrete and help keep the dust down, kind of mitigate that a little bit.
Rob, you got to...
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Questions for Mike. I got a couple here. So in relation to the alarms and the noise, I know there's an alternative called white noise alarms, and I believe I talked about it in our workshop, which was just us here as council. Do some of your machines have those? It's more like a squashing sound, less abrasive, and you're seeing like, a ready mix truck switch over to that and things of that nature. Is that something that is able to be adjusted to, or?
They have not switched to those yet, at least to the best of my knowledge. And if they have, we have not received any of those to the best of my knowledge at this point. But I know the sound you're talking about. Every time my Amazon guy shows up, I think his backup beeper's broken, but it's just the new sound.
Okay, thanks. And then Mayor had brought up about possible dust issues and things of that nature. Is there availability to maybe spray that once a summer with calcium chloride to keep the dust down, something of that nature, or maybe spraying it with water? I'm sure you'll have a water truck there in the dusting season.
Yep, I was going to mention we do rent water trucks as well. So yeah, whether it's the chloride or water, we absolutely will find ways to keep that dust down.
Great.
And honestly, it's a safety issue for our people. That dust flying around, we've had safety incidents throughout the company at times where dust just gets in the eyes. It'll even get around the safety glasses. So that's even a concern for our own people.
Yeah, and I would like to see move in there. Just kind of want to mitigate some of the concerns that the residents have, right? I think it's a much better option than what we had there before. The last people, they're possibly going to be doing some grinding noise with trees. Then the next one, there was garbage issues and things like that. So I think there's less refuse or garbage with this and packing containers and things of that nature. I was recently approached by a highway heavy contractor that was interested in coming there and do pile driving training. And I told them that would be a no-go, right? There's residents there. Granted, they're at this point legal non-conforming. That's just nothing we want to do with residents nearby that are still going to reside there for a while. So I like the idea, but just mitigating the noise concerns and dust concerns for the residents. So.
Absolutely. And to speak to the trash, I make sure that my general managers are going around their yards and cleaning them up at least once a month. I don't like to see it out there. It's not a good look for us. So if we do happen to have loose trash, whether it blew in from outside the fence or it came out of our own dumpsters, then, we certainly will go around and make sure that we're picking things up, and we will get outside the fence perimeter there, specifically because we do have these neighbors that we're going to make sure that we're picking up the trash that may get out. But you're correct. Most of our garbage is larger. It's pieces of machinery that are, no longer good to us and are getting thrown out or what have you.
Thank you.
This is Janet. I have a couple more questions. The dumpster that you plan to use, is that a roll-off dumpster, or is it going to be like a dumpster that has a cover on it?
No, they usually have covers on it. We might have a roll-off dumpster once in a while if for some reason we have, and it won't happen here, but we have had some locations that were acquired, so we had to get rid of a bunch of garbage, things that we weren't going to use after the acquisition, but typically they're going to be covered.
So I think that will solve the problem. I mean, I think the problem existed in the past because there's about, I don't know, somewhere between an 8 and a 10-inch gap from the ground to where the fence is, and so stuff blew underneath there and blew all over the place because they just used roll-off dumpsters. So if you have a dumpster that has a cover on it, I don't think you're gonna have a problem, and that actually would be something I'd like us to, I mean, I don't care if you have a roll-off dumpster too, but I would like to have it in the conditions that there's a cover on the dumpster, especially since there's not a enclosure. The other question I have is, there evidently is some sort of weird alarm system that's on that building right now, and when it goes off, it's like a voice conversation, and I know that it's not yours, it's like a remnant, but can you give us some assurance that you'll get rid of it, because it's really spooky?
I don't think we want it either, to be honest.
No, I don't think you do. But if we could put that somehow, it is really weird. And in fact, I will second, as we talked near the fence, you could hear our voices echoing back to us. So, I mean, just a normal conversation, you could hear, because everything is metal there, and it's all sort of just, and maybe it'll be different once it's filled up with equipment and stuff, but that would be really helpful, because that kind of is freaking people out. In terms of the lights, I went by at 10 o'clock at night on Tuesday, and it was like Close Encounters of the Third Kind lit up, and I think the lights look like they're downward facing, but all the surface is white there. You know, you got the white concrete, you got the white of the fence, you got the glass, and it just like glows way over the fence. And in Mr. Hogg's case, he's up higher, on higher ground. So I do think, I mean, we need to get a light meter out there and check that. But the question came up as we were chatting the other night is, well, what if those are security lights, what if they were on a motion detector, so that they only go on if there's motion, and then that would make a big difference for the residents that are nearby? I don't know if that's anything you might consider.
Yeah, we can certainly consider it. The shrouds will get put on. That's been discussed already, so that will get handled. We could look at the idea of motion sensing. I guess my thought is, and the question again, I haven't seen this property since August, is are there lights along that northern border that are facing in? So I guess my thought is if we could leave those lights on that are facing away from the residency and have the other ones on motion, that if, you know, we did have movement, we needed to pick it up. I mean, it's a possibility. There's no doubt about it. Again, we're trying to be as neighborly as possible in this, by all. So
I think, I know, it seems like there's lights all the way around the building. And I think those ones that would be on the northerly side are the ones that are probably shining into James's house.
Yeah.
Because he's to the north of where the Osterbergs are and up a little bit higher.
I know shrouds are part of the conditional use permit, and that's already been documented that we're going to take care of that. We're also going to take care of the dead trees. That's all been discussed internally here. So.
Okay, there's also a hole in the fence that's alongside of the property to the north. I can't think of her name now.
Copeland.
Copeland property. You guys didn't do it, but they're just letting you know there's a hole that got punched in the metal fence. You might want to fix that too. Looks kind of bad.
Yeah.
So my question, really, to get to the heart of the matter, is it possible to restrict loading before 7 o'clock? Like, you can't load these trucks until 7. You state your hours of operation are like 7 to 5, but if you really start working at 4 or 5 in the morning, then that's really your hours of operation, because that's when the nuisance factor comes into effect. And I just want to hear whether or not that's incompatible with business for you.
So what we're trying to do, what we've discussed, and what other locations are doing, some of my locations are successful, some are not, but I think this one will be. And the reason some are not is honestly, it's just a staffing issue. It's how people are working internally. But I think for the most part, we should be able to load at night. We should be able to have the schedule set up enough that we can preload the night before, and then in the morning, it's a matter of coming in, getting the trucks, and heading out. So to answer your question, for the most part, I think we should be able to not load early in the morning by all means. I mean, we're certainly trying not to break this noise ordinance by any means. You know, going to come down to whether or not we get like a last minute order. Somebody, we get calls. I mean, there's times we get calls at 7, 8 o'clock at night. Hey, is there any chance you can get this out? You know, obviously by then everybody's gone and home. So in those situations, we're going to be doing what we can to try to take care of our customer, but also still try to be neighborly in this sense.
So I'm thinking, like, if you got that call at 7 or 8 at night, the answer could be, hopefully, yes, we'll get that for you in the morning, but we won't be able to get it loaded up until 7 o'clock.
Right. No, absolutely.
Okay. Let me see if I had any other things I wrote down here. I just had a question about, from your narrative. Do you only repair your own equipment, or are you repairing other companies' equipment at this site?
We can do both. Right now in my district, I don't have anybody repairing outside equipment because we can't seem to keep up with our own. So we absolutely would if customers requested it and we were able to. We had the capacity, but most of the time we just don't have the capacity because we're too busy fixing our own stuff.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, I know that you've been really clear that you don't intend to have your trucks idling on that shared driveway. I'm wondering if there can be signs placed, so if there are customers that are picking up things, that they also know, you know, for right now there's a semi being loaded up, that they can't sit in that driveway because it blocks it. And that would be, I think, helpful for the people that don't work for you.
Sure.
Would you be
No,
able
not a
to?
problem.
Okay.
We can get some signage out there. And we'll have to do something beyond no parking. It'll almost be a no standing zone because people are going to, I'm just idling. It's okay. So we'll make sure the verbiage is right and we'll get some signage up out there. That's not an issue.
Okay. So what I would be looking for is conditions written to reflect those kinds of things. And I don't know if it makes sense to wait to do a final approval to see that, or how you guys want to move forward.
I have a few questions yet.
Oh, go.
Before we get.
Yeah.
Do you kind of slow down in the winter, like a concrete, do you? I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people don't want to be up in a boom lift in the middle of December in Minnesota, I don't think.
So your operations, you may be hauling out 2 or 3 drivers delivering this stuff, but when winter comes, you knock it down to maybe 1 truck, or how does it?
No, we still do what we can to, I mean, our goal is to stay busy all year, obviously, but we will slow down. But I don't know of any location. I've been in and out of this industry since 2012. I don't know. I've never laid anybody off during the wintertime or gotten to the point where we might have a couple of days where a particular driver or drivers aren't working because we just don't have the work. But I would say over a week's span, they're still all going to get hours one way or the other. So there's still going to be, a few trucks running each day.
Okay.
I do have one other question, sorry. It has to do with the fuel tank. So I know you're planning to keep that. And really this question is more for Eleanor. So in one of the conditions, it says there'll be no chemicals, odors, gases, hazardous waste, or fumes on the property resulting from its use other than normal emissions. But I think the fuel tank would be contradictory to that statement. So I just think we have to amend that statement to, kind of like what we did for, it was for the man caves, where fuels and things that are of normal use for that kind of business are okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
This is Assistant City Administrator Aaron Berg. Mike, I do have a question for you. Is your sale or your purchase of this property pending city approval? So as if you're closing tomorrow, you need an answer whether the city's going to approve your use or not, or you can't close tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, we're closing on Monday.
So it may be relevant to hammer out the conditions tonight so that they have an indication on whether they can move forward with the transaction or not to be able to move in.
Good call.
I have one real quick question again, Mike. You used the word night, loading up at night. What's night to you if you close at 5?
Before we close, before our hours are up. So I would say typically at the houses that I'm in charge of right now, my drivers are done for the day around 3 or 4 o'clock. So they would load up their next day before they leave for the day. So they would still probably be out by 5 o'clock, if not sooner.
Mr. Mayor, I have some questions, if I may. Yeah, Mike, a couple questions for you. Do you have a corporate safety manager or regional safety manager that you can bounce things off?
Yes.
Okay, then I might suggest that you look up OSHA Standard 29 CFR 1926.601 and .602. That's relevant to the backup alarms. The key word there is obstructed view, so that which would give you guidance on that. That's federal OSHA. I know the Osterbergs mentioned MinOSHA, but you are also under federal OSHA, and you might find some answers there about your backup alarms. I do know that it's not decibel, it just has to sound different and be distinguished. So it doesn't necessarily have to be loud, it's just got to be recognized as a backup alarm, and there are certain conditions that you may not have to have one. So obviously, I don't want to give you legal advice.
It does have to be louder than the equipment. That's the only, I think that's the one OSHA requirement. It has to be louder than the equipment it's on.
Yeah, I'll let you deal with your safety manager on that, but that might give you some direction there that maybe you haven't considered. And then the fuel tank, is that an above-ground fuel tank?
Yep.
Okay, so we're regulated by the state on the above-ground fuel tank too, okay. And then a question for the Osterbergs, would that be appropriate, if I can?
Sure.
Okay. When you've had noise complaints, I was able to watch the Planning Commission meeting video. When you've had noise complaints in the past with the previous occupants, have you called and made noise complaints to the Sheriff's Department if it was outside the hours by state law and city code? Okay. Have you thought about that, if somebody's starting work before 7 to call?
We certainly will now.
Okay.
We did talk directly with the owner.
Sure.
On a couple occasions, one regarding that alarm. That's so funky. And then when people came in after, so our first attempt was to talk to the owner. But then we did not take it any further than that.
Okay. Yeah, that's something in the future, you know, if there's a legitimate noise complaint, or maybe it's not legitimate, but you need to find out, that might be something that's, you know, call the sheriff's non-emergency number for a response. It is state code and it is city code as well, too, so that's an option. I know you checked with Scott County, a question for staff. I know you checked with Scott County, and you're looking at me, so you know I'm going to ask. Did we check about any noise complaints about the previous occupants in Columbus at that same location?
We did not, actually, for the Sheriff's Department in general, and I mostly checked in with Sean, our code compliance inspector, who had been working with the previous businesses regarding those noise complaints and trash complaints. And there hadn't been any in the last 6 or 7 months of them occupying that space, but.
Okay, and then a follow-up question for you, Ellie. Would this be appropriate then for the Osterbergs and other people to call code enforcement too, or would this be a law enforcement phone
This
call?
could 100% be code enforcement, especially since it's laid out in their CUP so clearly regarding those noise complaints. Sometimes the sheriffs are busy handling some more time-sensitive or intense situations, and Sean, our code and compliance inspector, can certainly be.
You'd get a better response.
In these cases like this, if it were after hours, definitely call the Sheriff's Department, because they're the enforcement arm of this issue of code. During business hours, they can definitely call here, and we can forward the complaint on to the Sheriff's Department.
And okay. And Mike, so you understand, you know, if it does come to it, you know, that's an alternative that the residents have. But I believe you're trying to be a good neighbor here, and that it won't come to that.
And again, if there are issues, I think the first step would be go directly to the owner.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, then that's the second alternative and option.
And just for the record, it was asked, I believe in the email that Eleanor sent over, we have not had any noise violations at any of our locations throughout the country, and that's currently it's 300 locations. So just so everybody's aware, I did some digging into that through the corporate, through our corporation, and we have not had any noise complaints in any of our locations. So.
Good. Yeah, and like you said, Jack, I think that, owner to resident resolving these issues is best, but if push comes to shove, there are other alternatives, so. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments? But
Yeah, and I guess this would be for Eleanor. Do we know of any, and you probably haven't had time to look into it or anything like that, but any complaints that have came from the lift store down the road at Cityview Electric? I think it's called Want a Lift. I mean, they're running, just like this place here, they're running them same trucks in and out.
Yes, so I haven't checked formally on Want a Lift with the sheriff's or with our code compliance inspector. However, that CUP for those boom lifts was approved, I think, just 5 or 6 years ago, and it is in the same zoning district. And I do think that that's a good point to bring up regarding that.
Yeah. I mean, I personally haven't heard any. Is anyone else on the council currently? There's residents right up against that as well.
Yes.
We actually wondered if that was, I didn't know that that was part of their approved business.
Yes,
I was
so
wondering.
Cityview Electric came back for a CUP amendment regarding that Want a Lift facility. I think, off the top of my head, it was 2018 through 2020. Don't have the exact year. I think it was 2019 that they came back to get that CUP amendment.
I bet it was before 2019 because I don't remember them. I remember them coming because they had a new business with that was like security
The
things,
blinds,
like the
blind
blinds for the
company.
windows. But I don't remember anything about boom lifts, so that must have been before 2019.
Okay. They have quite a few amendments on that property. There's a good packet of them.
I think the only difference there is they're concealed by 3 sides of building, or 2 sides for sure, and they park them in between.
Yes.
This is Jenny. They definitely have some barriers
Yep.
of their own building, so it's not necessarily right next to the resident.
Right.
And so I think that's, a little bit of the difference here because you do have this rent-ready equipment situation where you could have equipment pushed right up next to and near their home. I think that is really my major concern is there any ability to, I don't even know how to create a condition, or I guess I'm going to ask you, is there any ability to have a workaround next to their home? I think that's, I'm trying to be very understanding of their concerns. So I guess, obviously, I don't want to try to mitigate what you do on your daily because your rent-ready equipment, I understand needing to push the equipment forward that you're going to use the next day, but at the cost of them having peace in their home, that's, I think, a major concern for me.
if I'm right, you're working 7 in the morning to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. And after 5, nothing's moving. So this is just a visual that we're looking at? Any other comments before we move on here? I mean, I look at the conditions. We're looking at 4 things to either add or modify. One was lights, noise, dust, and hours. But hours are kind of, like Mike said, kind of point blank, 7 to 5.
Yes, I would like to solidify those added conditions at this meeting tonight, if that's okay. And so I was hearing things about fixing the lights. We can amend, just to go through what's going on, our standard number 15, which is the downcast and shrouded as required by Columbus City Ordinance for outdoor lighting standards. I believe that there is another provision in that code that says directed away from residents. So we can definitely add that and ensure that the lighting has been directed away from residents shrouded and downcast.
Eleanor, can I just ask a question? I just remember this coming up with another business, and I thought there was like in our ordinance, it can't exceed more than 1
candle
foot or foot candle at the property line.
Yes.
Which, could we just have somebody, I mean, I've done it before. You can give me that light meter and I'll go stand out there at 10 o'clock and tell you whether it exceeds that or not?
Yes. So since this has been brought up as a continuous concern, I'm going to amend that condition to include more of that referenced code, the section 7A813. We sort of simplify it and just put in the section code. and then have that specifically mentioned as a compliance inspection follow-up to make sure with the lumen monitor to double check that and make sure that it does fit our city code.
Okay.
Okay?
And is there a way to just, you know, consider having motion-activated lights when it's possible? Because I do think that would go a long way towards, you know, still having the security benefit of the lights, but, you know, keeping it reasonable for the folks that are around it. Because I do think the white metal fence and the inside of the fence is a light color, even though the
Yes.
outside of the fence, it bounces that light off of it like a mirror.
Would you guys be willing to consider having those motion detected lights?
Or at least look into
Yeah, like I said, I would definitely look into it. The only question I have, I guess, while we're talking about this and I'm thinking it through, depending on how far apart the lights are, we're going to figure out where to put motion sensors. You know, we don't want a blind spot, so to speak, that if somebody were to get in, it doesn't pick them up. That would be my only concern, but I'm sure we can figure that out. I don't know if you can like add extra sensors or, you know, series them together, that sort of a thing, but I don't see why we shouldn't be able to figure that out.
Okay. The other thing that I heard considered was the dust. Would we like to add a condition requiring a yearly dust treatment with calcium chloride or something similar?
Or they can
condition.
submit their dust mitigation plan, which is, I think, what we've
even
asked
better.
before. And then
Yeah,
we,
perfect.
you know, that they can choose whatever way they want to do it.
So the applicant will submit a dust mitigation plan to be approved by the city engineer.
Yeah.
Okay. I will send you guys the details on that afterwards, but that will be an additional condition. Dust mitigation. I also heard no spooky alarms.
Get rid of the haunted house sound.
No haunted house sounds. And Megan, is there an ability to have the no loading before 7 a.m. Condition, or is there some language that we can use for that?
Yes, so I think what I hear the applicant saying is that the applicant is willing for a condition that suggests that the hours of operation on the site will be from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and that no loading will occur prior to 7 a.m. And I'll just seek confirmation from the applicant on that.
Or after 5.
Yeah, again, to the best of our ability, absolutely. You know, we plan on preloading the night before, and hopefully that's all. Here's where it gets tricky with our business, and this is the only thing. And just again, to be honest and transparent about this, if we end up in a situation where a customer decides to call and, hey, we don't need that piece of equipment, we may have to offload a piece of equipment in the morning. Might have to, but that's few and far between. And that's the reason that we typically don't preload, because sometimes that's what's happened in other locations where the rental coordinator wasn't doing their job very well and missed up an order or something like that. But again, that's a few and far between thing. And I've even considered the idea that we may just simply have to take that piece of equipment with us and deal with it to avoid obviously breaking this noise ordinance.
I think that's really generous of you. The other possibility, and I think this goes to what you were saying, because I looked up the OSHA requirements too, and it sounded like, and again, I'm no expert on this, but if you have an obstructed view, but you have a spotter, you don't need the backup beeper. So like if you had to do that at 5 in the morning and you had another staff person that could go out there to, you know, wave the flag and show them where they could be. I mean, that's another possibility where you could unload, but you just wouldn't have the beeper on because you have a person back there directing where that equipment's going to go. So just another idea.
The tricky part there, just again for clarity, is that we don't have a way of turning the beepers off on this equipment. So it has to remain on, especially because once it does get on a job site, on a construction zone, if they have a way to see that you can turn that on and off, it's actually a violation, if I'm not mistaken. I'm quite certain. I know on pickup trucks it's different, but on the equipment itself, it's not an option.
Okay.
things that can go on the road usually have the ability to bypass that and get around that. But if it's not roadworthy, then it's not allowed.
Yeah, and just from experience, this is Scott, just from experience, from a liability side, the corporation may not want them to shut it off, even if it was legally allowed. Lord forbid you have a kid that hops the fence. I think that was alluded to before, that they don't know is there, and they back over them, and they have disabled that device. There's a liability there too that they have to consider.
Mr. Mayor, Assistant City Administrator Aaron Berg, not only does Equipment Share have this issue on their own site, but they're renting this equipment to someone else and putting it on a construction site. So the receiver of this equipment and utilizing it could be liable for an OSHA violation on their own job site, which could lead to litigation against Equipment Share for not having an alarm properly placed. And so we're looking at not only Equipment Share's problem, but the renter's problem as well if you eliminate a backup beeper.
I was just hoping they could turn it on and off. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's not the way it works.
Of course.
If we could, this whole thing would be a whole lot easier for all of us.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
It'd be so simple. So consolidating the hours of operations, I also heard that the dumpsters must be covered at all times, except for occasional use. And then regarding the booms being held, stored upwards, yes, sorry, I'm stuttering over my words here. I did not hear a solid consensus on what we wanted to do with that situation, if we wanted to consider a condition for that.
I couldn't hear what you were saying.
I didn't hear it.
Oh, regarding the boom lifts being stored raised and elevated, I didn't hear a full consensus on whether or not we wanted to put a condition or what we wanted to consider with that particular situation.
I look at it, like Rob said, down the road, we have another company that has these that are lifted all the way up.
Yeah.
I don't want to I don't think the neighbors are as close. I can see them on the road down the street as I go by. I hope that maybe we could work something out where if you're going to lift them up, you lift them up as short as possible and keep them away from that east fence. The farther away you're from it, the sight line should start going down, wouldn't it?
Or keep it, I think you mentioned keep it like kind of behind the building, which I think you mentioned like a site where the trucks were parked that you could maybe put it, and that would really, I think, go a long way towards keeping it from being an eyesore from Lake Drive. And it would also be, I think, the best place for them in terms of the neighbors.
Yeah,
Yeah, the only ones that wouldn't,
Yep.
the only ones that wouldn't be there would be the ones that were staged, ready to go for the next day for the most part.
Yep. But that'd
We
be
will do what
okay.
we can to stow back there.
So maybe we could just put that in.
From what I've heard, that would be like the long-term storage of boom lifts would be stored in the southeast corner of the storage yard behind the building. The only exception to that would be, of course, boom lifts going out the next day would be stored in the front to avoid that noise situation that we're also trying to deal with.
I think you got it.
All right, perfect.
This is Jenny. Thank you for working with us on that.
Yeah, I really appreciate this.
Absolutely.
You have anything else, Ellie?
I think that was everything that was discussed. Please correct me if I missed anything.
I have one more thing. We haven't discussed it, but I don't think it's that big a deal. So I don't think there's any condition about requiring that the fence remains in good repair. And since that's the sort of option that is predicating the PUD, I wonder if we want to add that condition.
I can certainly pull it out. Our general shall construct and maintain all site improvements.
That would be good, yeah.
Yes, we do have the general maintain all site improvements in good repair, but I can pull out specific and specify that fence.
And then I think based on what we just did, you can probably take out the condition 14 that you had added based on the discussion at the Planning Commission, because there'd be no need for them to do that study.
Is there a consensus to remove the noise study as well?
Oh, the noise study?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could pull that up.
Yeah.
All right, that works
I mean,
for
that's
us.
what's your consensus? Yeah. Oh, Rob's gone.
No, this is Jenny, I agree. I think
Okay.
we've put enough other contingencies in place that it should mitigate.
All right.
Yep.
So Mike, you understand what all we've said here tonight?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait till Rob gets back before we make a motion here. Unless anybody else has any other questions. Megan, are we okay?
Yes, and I think a condition that the applicant had offered up as well was creating signage on the driveway
Yes,
there
thank you,
to
yes.
allow so no idling or parking along the shared drive aisle. I think that makes sense.
Yep. Thank you for remembering
you.
that.
Thank you.
I got it in my notes.
This is Jenny. Are most of your customers that are coming on site continuous customers, or do you have a lot of one-off people coming to pick up equipment?
It's really both. Obviously our plan is to have return customers as much as possible, but we might have some one-offs. Either they're out of town contractors working temporarily in your area, or maybe they, just we do a little bit. I mentioned this in one of the other meetings prior. We do have some DIY homeowners that'll come through once in a while and maybe rent like a towable boom lift or something that they need for their home. So those might be one-off customers, but typically it's return customers. And to be honest with you, most of my locations, if we see 3, 4, maybe 5 customers in a day, that's a lot. There's times we will have none or 1 or 2 come through. So, but most of them are repeat, I would say.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll make the motion. I, Ron Hanegraaff, move to approve the equipment share PUD CUP with their conditions as recommended by the Planning Commission and presented in the staff report for this item. Also, the conditions noted during this meeting to Ellie.
This is Scott. I'll second that motion.
We have a motion on the floor, seconded. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote on it. Jenny?
Jenny, I.
Scott, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. Thank you very much. Mike?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
Thanks for
Appreciate
coming.
your work
And
with
the 2
us.
gentlemen in the back, I recognize that we're at the Planning Commission too. That we're silent today, but thanks for coming.
And Rob and Kathy, thanks for
Yeah.
Yes,
letting
thank
us
you.
know. We hope it all works out for everybody. If you have a problem, give us a call.
Absolutely.
And welcome to the city.
Yes.
Very much. Appreciate that.
You bet.
All right, we're going to go on to item number 4, 2026 SCORE grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Solid Waste Collection and Recycling Enhancement Program in Minnesota provides grants to counties and local governments to support waste reduction, reuse, and recycling efforts. It was established in 1989 by the Governor's Select Committee on Recycling and the Environment. And this is where the acronym SCORE comes from, and has been a key source of funding for these programs. These funds are allocated to counties for local distributions to cities and townships. The grants are funded from the residential and commercial county solid waste and recycling tax. 2026 grant funds in the amount of $31,060 are available to the City of Columbus. The funds are for the use for the following categories. Number 1, the base funding amount in the amount of $19,125 would be used for recycling events, the commingle dumpster, membership dues, promotion, and in addition to this amount, the city is requesting the following supplementary funding for the program. This would include the enhancement funding in the amount of $5,800, which is used for the summer curbside event and the organics program, and funding for the administrative costs of the program in the amount of $6,135. The city's base funding is a $10,000 allotment that each municipality in Oak County receives, along with $5 per household allocation. The 1,580 Columbus household counts used for the allocation calculation are from the Met Council demographic estimates for 2026. The city's recycling goal for 2026 is 467 tons. The city met their annual goal requirements in 2023 and 2024. The tonnage goal is set by Anoka County, but there is no penalty if the goal is not met. However, those recipients that meet their annual goals receive additional consideration for supplementary grants available from this program. The SCORE grant covers the cost of the city's recycling program. No city monies are used to support this activity. Staff is requesting City Council approval to submit the 2026 SCORE grant application to the Anoka County Public Health and Environmental Services to fund the city's recycling program.
Thank you, Jack. Any discussion on this?
This is Scott. Lori wrote the grant for us?
Yes.
Right? Thank you, Lori, because this grant application looks like it's very long.
And I tried to make the numbers work and could not. So I just have a simple question. The county says that we're eligible for $31,060, and that's what we're asking for, isn't that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and we don't get more than that because that's all they're saying we're eligible for.
That's correct. We're only
That's what I remember from past years. So, I mean, when you start trying to add these up, the numbers don't work out, but I know she's done this a million times, so that's really the important numbers to remember.
Other discussion? Anybody want to make a motion?
So I can, so this is Janet. I move to authorize the city staff to submit the 2026 SCORE grant application to Anoka County Public Health and Environmental Services to fund the city's recycling program.
This is Jenny, I second.
Got a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Any other discussion or questions? Having none, we'll go to a vote. Jenny?
Jenny, I.
Scott, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. Go to item number 5, City Council AI uses and minutes discussion. Jack? Or I'm
Aaron.
sorry, Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Aaron, Assistant City Administrator. At the May 6, 2025 City Council workshop, staff presented an overview of the exploratory use of generative artificial intelligence in city operations with an initial focus on preparation of City Council meeting minutes. Following this discussion, staff have continued to evaluate the tool's effectiveness and have identified additional routine applications where AI can improve efficiencies and support administrative processes. Staff have found the use of generative AI, particularly for meeting documentation, to be functional and a reliable alternative to existing practices. It shows promise in supporting other routine operational tasks such as drafting reports, summarizing content, and managing communication templates. At the May 6th workshop, Council had some questions regarding transparency, sources, and accuracy, data privacy, and ownership. And so staff has done some, as well as redaction of proprietary information and the use of verbatim transcripts. Staff has done some research into OpenAI's use of information. There are several types of accounts available through OpenAI, to include an enterprise account in which corporations can utilize AI for its usefulness. These type of accounts have full control over data input and output, so the owner agency defines what comes in and what goes out. There are strong privacy commitments by OpenAI for end-to-end encryption of their storage of information, and they do not use data in sharing or training other enterprise accounts' outputs. So whatever information under an enterprise account gets put in stays within our account. It's not used on anyone else's platform. In order to explore the cost of an enterprise account, OpenAI requires that you submit a bunch of information. I have submitted that information. They responded back to me saying, based on your enterprise's size, we recommend your agency use what's called ChatGPT Teams, which also has the same protections as their enterprise account. It's just made for organizations of the size of 1 to 50. instead of 100 to 200 occupants or users. In terms of the question regarding redacting of proprietary information, staff have researched Minnesota state statute, which classifies trade secrets as non-public data, which identifies that the city bears the burden of proving whether provided data qualifies as a trade secret or not. If the city determines that it is, we have the right to redact that information and not make it public. So if a applicant would come in with an application for a land use item, and they disclose on their application that part of it is a trade secret, before releasing that document, the city can redact that information. However, data discussed at an open meeting although it retains its original classification, the written materials or the recording are public data. So we would have to release those transcripts if they were requested. The other question was the use of verbatim transcripts. Verbatim transcripts generated by AI are not required by law for regular or closed meetings. So a written transcript is not required. For closed sessions, only an audio recording is required to be maintained. Transcripts of regular meetings are considered government data under the Data Practices Act, but are not classified as government records and do not require retention. So once official meeting minutes are approved and adopted, the transcript can be destroyed. Draft AI-generated transcripts are designated as unofficial and can be identified as such when releasing that to the public via a data request. As the use of AI tools expands, there is a growing need to establish guidelines and guardrails for city employee use. Staff note that multiple draft municipal AI policies exist and are available for reference and adoption. Staff recommends that the City Council approve the continued use of generative artificial intelligence for appropriate city functions and operations, including meeting documentation. And staff would recommend that City Council direct staff to draft a city AI use policy to be brought up to a future council work session for further discussion and refinement. I did include a handout from the League of Cities on what decision makers should know about artificial intelligence. It is a little bit dated, and there are some other articles out there that provide more accurate information about the use of AI. But as you know, it's a very fast-changing world, and so without having those guardrails, I think we have a little bit of risk, but creating a policy on employee use would be helpful.
Well, thank you, Aaron. So you have a motion here. We have any discussion on this?
I got to believe the attorney has something to say about this.
So one of the things that I would just suggest, and it's well documented in staff's memo as well as the league's memo and their associated policy, is any non-public data, right? And classification of data is always important for cities. Any data that is classified as either private data or non-public data, should never get into the AI system, regardless of whether it's an enterprise system or a non-enterprise system, because there's just a level of control that the city doesn't maintain, and it creates a legal risk for you. However, utilizing AI to effectively manage your meeting minutes, your creation of agendas, compiling packets, so long as there's a good staff member alongside to review those products, it is a great way to increase efficiency, and we're seeing it utilized much more regularly across cities in the Twin Cities area.
Well, thank you, Megan.
So I have some thoughts on this. And, first of all, I just want to thank Aaron for looking into this, because I do think it has great potential to solve our problem with minutes. But it really is, it still requires someone to really carefully go back and look at the minutes and what AI comes up with. And I think that, you and I have talked about this, Aaron, and maybe this is the right time to just bring it up, and if it's not, we should put it on our workshop, is, I think part of the challenge for anybody who's trying to generate these minutes is how much detail or what really should be included. And, I have used my own experience in trying to go back to minutes to understand why certain decisions were made, and that sort of is what informs me as to like, here, we need to have some explanation as to why these decisions were made, not just the motion or not just, what everybody voted for. And I know, Rob, you've talked about transparency and stuff, and so I think it's important to be able to have in our minutes, if people vote yes or no, some sense of why they voted that way, because I think it's really helpful to the public. And it's also helpful in terms of going back and trying to piece together why things happened. So my point is that, how do we, if we're going to use artificial intelligence to kind of give us our first draft, how do we help the staff know how much is enough in that regard? And I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks. And actually, I'd like to hear what Aaron thinks too, since he's been on the receiving end of my edits.
That is actually item 6 after we discuss the use of AI. The next item is, what do you want in your minutes? How detailed do you want them? What do you want to see? What's required by law? What is officially, are we required to retain? So that is actually the next item on the discussion. So
good.
If the city's comfortable with using AI, and I think it sounds like we are, we're just looking for your approval to do that, as well as bring back a policy. And then if we want to dive into the deeper discussion on the next item, I think that's the appropriate time to do that.
So I would like to switch the order of your recommendation. I think it would be great to have the policy first before we wholeheartedly embrace AI as the minutes. I think it's fine for you to continue to use it in the way that you've used it, and it's clear that, you're looking at it, and we should all be looking at it to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. But there have been examples in the couple that you've given, and then in reading this material, it's like, oh, this is why this happens, where it just makes stuff up. It isn't what somebody said. It isn't what was actually on the transcript. It just made it up. And so that is why we all need to read it. So what I would say, I'm fine with us going forward with this, but I'd rather, before making it a formal policy that we use generative AI to generate our minutes, I would rather that we come up with the AI use policy first. And you can continue, since you're doing it, you can continue to use it. And the difference in my mind is once you have the policy, then any of the staff can do it because it's guiding their use. Right now, it would be just you because you're the one who's got the expertise.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. The question's for Megan. Are we aware of other cities that are using this, or is this something new that cities are using? I use it currently for like note taking, and it punches out like a bullet point format of notes, but I've never, outside of what we've seen here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are seeing cities utilize it more in terms of creating transcripts of their meeting minute, or for their meeting minutes purposes, and then certainly for records of their workshops, and just as you suggested, taking the just notes of the meeting itself. And so, in the last week, I've been on a number of city calls, and there's an AI bot that's running in the background, recording and summarizing what the takeaways are from the meeting, and those are generally prepared and provided to all of the participants in the meeting. So we are seeing it utilized at a very growing speed.
Sure. And one other thing, could there be some sort of policy put in place that, say, there was 2 people meeting on a council or talking about something, that they need to be notified that they're being recorded? Because I've been in certain situations where this thing's under the table, and then next thing I find out, yeah, that whole conversation was being recorded. I know it's the rules, it's kind of a one-way state. You don't have to be notified, but I mean,
Yep, that's right. So, I think that's something that would be incorporated within the policy is that, if city staff is going to have a meeting with a land use applicant and is going to utilize an AI bot to record the transcript of that meeting and provide notes to all participants, that, we'd be notified that there's an AI bot that's, so that's something that you could absolutely dictate through your policy with the guidance of the council.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could. I like the idea of AI. I'm just looking at the bills we approved tonight, and I'm looking at the city council meeting minutes, 10 hours for February 12th, 10 hours for February 26th, 5 hours for April 9th, 15 hours for April 23rd. I would assume that we're not going to be taking, Danielle is doing as good of a job as she possibly can, but I'm assuming we are not going to be taking 10 hours with AI to record our city council minutes. So
I can tell you, Councilmember Wendell, that as soon as the YouTube video of this meeting is uploaded to our system, I can have a draft version of minutes without a ton of detail in about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's very appealing. The other thing that concerns me, and I think, Megan, you hit on this too, is the private information that's being redacted and that we have the right person in place to do that. Aaron, I got a lot of confidence in you, but if you move on and aren't here, we've got to make sure that the next person is familiar with the private data and the Minnesota Data Practice Act. So we're redacting all that information should it get in there.
So your city already has a data practices policy in place that dictates and identifies what all that data is and how it can and can't be used and what needs to be redacted and how long it needs to be stored and when it can be destroyed. That already exists. This would just need to be classified as one of those categories that already exist.
Sure, and I'm sure it exists, but we need a person who knows how to manage that already exists. Yeah.
And I would also say, I know there's holes in that policy. Jack and I have talked about this because we just went through this on the Sunrise, and there's a lot of work to be done on that outside of the AI side of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I just say that having to work with data practice when cameras came out in police cars, it was a nightmare. So,
and they have their own classification of data that we don't have to
this
think about.
Is a whole nother level that I don't even want to think about. So, thank you.
And this is Rob. I just want to say that recording thing, that wasn't a workplace setting. It wasn't here. I just want that clear for us, right? Like, I don't want everyone to think, why the hell are they recording each other? So,
Jenny, you had something?
Yeah, this is Jenny. One question for you, Aaron. When it comes to the minutes and reviewing after, because I know that AI can fill in where it may have blanks or really not understand, can you walk me through what that looks like? Are you going back and watching verbatim and ensuring that everything follows correctly? Can you just walk me through that process?
Yeah, and I think potentially at a workshop, when we talk about the policy, maybe we can actually go through what it takes to do a set of minutes so you can see the steps of the process. But yes, after the 15 minutes are up, and actually I can have a transcript in about less than 30 seconds once the recording starts. But then prompting ChatGPT in these circumstances to add items that match the agenda, add items that match format, add items. Those are the steps that, and then in the review process, and I've had this a couple of times with some more detailed minutes that I've asked for, is it's not quite doing what I want it to do. And so I have to go back and either start over with the transcript and then prompt it to do what I want it to do, or review the YouTube video or the video and pull out of the transcript so that it can be accurate. So yeah, there is staff review time, but I would say in my learning process, the longest it's taken me to do one set of minutes is probably 3 hours, and that it was review as well as going back but I'm learning the system. And so once you get that down, there may be some prompt or trigger words that would work better. I just don't know what they are.
Thank you for your work. This is Jenny. Thank you for your work on this too. I know we all appreciate the dedication and also working with staff and training others on this as well. It's definitely, I think, a step in the right direction. So obviously my bigger concern is where it fills in. I just want to make sure we're catching some of that so we're not creating misinformation, if that makes sense.
Any other discussion? Well, I don't want to scare the staff or nothing, but I was watching the news today. They say that in the next 5 to 10 years, this will knock off 20% of the jobs in the United States, AI.
I will just remind you of when they said that computers would take away paper and there'd be no more paper in offices. And like, we know that didn't happen. So that's about how much faith I have in that prediction.
Look at 10 hours.
Well, but 10, I mean, she's 10 hours because she's new. She doesn't have any background in this. And if you just sit through our 2-hour meeting, I mean, if you just have to sit and watch a video of us because you're not here, that's 2 hours of time right then and there.
Yeah, well, I'm just telling you what some economic person, and maybe you got no more than him.
No, I'm just saying, I just remember that there wasn't going to be any paper anymore, and there's more paper than there was even before computers.
So are we going to switch these around, get moving here?
Do you want to table this one until after the workshop, and we can bring this back as a
I like that
full
idea.
item?
Yeah, I like that idea.
We're going to bring back both items, 5 and 6?
Do you want to have the minutes discussion now so we know which direction to go, or we can also wait on that?
We could just do it as a whole for the,
What?
do it as a whole for the workshop?
Well, we're loading up on a workshop here, aren't we?
Oh,
Jack?
The workshop agenda has been a moving target, and we've had several changes. That's why I just gave you a handout on some of the topics that we have to discuss or propose to discuss. This is one of them that's on there, though.
Oh, okay. So should we put it up?
We can combine the two, and it might make more sense to do it that way.
I mean, I went through it and I wrote down my notes, but I don't think we want to take the time to go through and do this here.
Okay. So we'll put it off to the workshop next Tuesday,
Yes.
June 3rd? Okay, we'll run down to item number D then, consultants, liaisons, and staff reports. The city engineer, Brian, you still awake over there?
Consulting City Engineer Brian Bachmeyer. Good evening, Mayor and Council. No formal reports again this evening, but I can share what I've been working on for the last couple of weeks. Been working with the Public Works Director on Hornsby street lighting plans with the design team on that project. Also confirming there's the absence of city utilities in some vacated right-of-way that the city's in the process of selling. I attended the 10/22/32 Rice Creek Watershed District meeting yesterday. That discussion collected some final paperwork for 2024 projects so they can be closed out, and then started working on that water appropriation permit draft letter, kind of gathering and generating the data that will be needed for that application and sharing it with Jim and going forward with that. So that's what I've been working on the last couple of weeks. With that, stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, before we proceed with those reports, could we go back? There's one last report item, C7, and that's to adopt the agenda for the workshop. And I just gave you a handout. It's changed 2 or 3 times since this was put out last Friday. We've had one addition that's a time-sensitive matter from the Anoka County Highway Department. They want to present the final review on the Kettle River Lake Drive roundabout project. Jim has participated in about 3 remote meetings with them. One of the things that was discussed in the last meeting, which was yesterday, was kind of some final design elements, which we came up with, is we've recommended this should be a rural design, which would include no sidewalks because we've eliminated all the trail portions. Would be a 3-legged roundabout, which would improve traffic flow and also be more cost-effective and reduce the cost of it. So they want to come here and present that to the council because this is a project that's going to have to start by 2027 because the federal funding has to be spent by a certain date. So we'll have Jerry O.J. and Nicholas Dobda here to make a presentation and give us the final information. And then we'll get some idea of what our cost share is going to be for the project. So that would be the one item. Paul Peterson was going to be here to discuss AI podcasts. but Paul had a conflict with the date and said he could come to the next workshop meeting. We have the discussion of the city AI use, which will be just a continuation of what we have briefly discussed tonight. We discussed also, too, the location of the Columbus sign that was donated to us. We can provide you some information and recommendations and discuss potential locations for that. St. Clair State's HOA has requested to come to the council to go over a few things that they want to do on the access to the Howard Lake area that they have, which would require some city approval and some DNR approval. And then we'd mentioned, too, we need to start talking again about what are we going to do about City Hall. We've identified some structural problems, and we need to start thinking about taking some action on those. So those are the 6 items that I would propose we try to address, unless you have any others you want to add or take away any of those that are proposed.
I think that's enough. Start with. Thanks again, Brian, for your report. Sorry about the item number 7 there.
So do you need a motion to adopt that?
Megan wants to talk.
Oh.
Yeah. Megan? You were.
I thought we were moving on to the city attorney's report, and I only had a joke to make, so I got very excited.
Jumping all over.
Must be a good joke.
Are you going to make that motion?
I will. This is Janet. I move to approve the June 3rd, 2025 workshop agenda as presented in the staff report for this item.
Anybody want to second that?
Rob, I'll second.
We got a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Let's take a vote. Jenny?
Jenny, aye.
Scott, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. Now we'll jump over to our favorite Megan for her report.
I will say that the city attorney was very impressed by the city engineer's report, and the city attorney, Mr. Griffith, will try to make a better impression at the next meeting. But we have no updates for you at this point in time.
Oh,
You don't have a
End
crystal
report.
ball to tell us what's happening down in St. Paul?
Exactly.
so that's end report, huh?
End report, exactly right.
Okay, we'll run to item number 3, City Council's report. Jenny, you have anything?
Nothing major to report. The only thing I wanted to update was that our Assistant City Administrator updated. I know online there were some questions and residents had some different questions about how they communicate to the city when they have questions, concerns, or otherwise. And the city did put out a post with a link to our website. So I just wanted to thank you for that because it squashed some questions that people had and allowed them to have easy access to the city. And I know that that's monitored. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. Scott?
Just briefly, Paul Peterson, I just want to clarify, it's not an AI podcast, it's a podcast, and he's got some interesting ideas about AI. The whole idea behind the podcast, though, is to get information out to the citizens of Columbus before city council meetings, so they're informed and they have the opportunity to provide us feedback at council meetings. So kind of excited about that, and I can't wait for Paul to come in. I know he's come in and presented before here, but now we've got some specific ideas. So
Thank you. Janet?
So I have a couple things quickly. Brian had mentioned the Rice Creek Watershed meeting that we had. So just for the rest of you, this was a meeting that the city pulled together. We've been talking about this ditch 102232 for about 3 years. It's a ditch that runs from Carlos Avery down to Marchand Lake in Lionel Lakes and runs through Columbus. It's a main source of drainage, and it has not been maintained, and there's been multiple problems with properties flooding. And so there's been lots of talk about what do we need to do about that. And this was a meeting that was trying to take those 3 years of discussion and create some concrete next steps. I think there was some learning points for all of us there. The DNR was available to be at that meeting. Commissioner Reinert was there. Residents Perry and Steve Wagaman and Dave Ryback were there. Brian was there. Mayor Ron and myself and Aaron and Jack were there, and Nick from the Rice Creek Watershed. So we had a good, I hope I didn't forget anybody.
Bill.
Oh, and Bill was there, that's right. He was online, he was in the box. So we had a really good discussion. There is some kind of homework for folks, and we will be doing another follow-up meeting in a few months, but nothing, no action items that I can really report on there. The second thing is I had called Cheryl this afternoon because I had some questions about the bills. I just didn't know what they were. And so we talked about that a little bit. One of the things that she asked that I do is to get direction from the council on what to do with residents who have dogs that get picked up and they get billed for the, what do they call it? Whatever, the kenneling charge and the pickup charge, and they don't pay it. And neither of us could remember if we'd actually given clear direction to staff on that. And I think we talked about, then they go to collection. But she wasn't confident that that was the direction. So I was asking her, from our list of bills, there was a claimed animal, whatever you call it, a dog that was out and the owner claimed him. And so there's charge that we have to pay, and this owner was billed and she's not paying it, and she's not going to pay it. So my question, I think, to Cheryl is, well, now what do we do? And she goes, I don't know, you tell me what we do. So I'm happy to bring that up. I don't know, Jack, if you have a recollection that's different than hers and mine, but.
We did have the discussion and says this is our only option at this time. If they don't pay the bill, then we'd have to turn it over to collection agency. But we never did act formally or give any direction, and I think we could just come up with a little policy to state this is the procedure we're going to use for an unpaid bill for a reclaimed animal if the owner doesn't pay the charge.
Do you need anything more than what we just did, or do you need a formal direction, motion, or anything?
I think the direction's clear enough.
Okay.
It'll be recorded in the minutes, and
Okay.
I don't think it deserves a thing of going to a policy. It's just more
Okay,
or less.
I just don't think that the rest of the city should be paying for somebody's dog who's running around and somebody decides they don't want to pay the penalty for that. So, good, thank you. That's it.
Rob?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. Fielded several phone calls in regards to the gravel roads. I got emails out to Jack, Aaron, and Jim, and it seems that Jim was already working on it that day. So thank you for that. I'm sure the residents will be appreciative of that. And then also fielded some phone calls in regards to some roosters in a residential neighborhood, rooster chickens, as well as chickens ranging far from home and tearing up garden beds and things of that nature for people that are very particular about their gardens. They had tried to address that their own, but I got him Sean's number and got him involved, and it sounds like there's some resolution there already. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Rob. This wasn't on the agenda, but I'm going to use it right now while I got a moment. I was at the Park Board meeting on Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. Item number one on the agenda was the dugouts. Leah Janetsky, the president of FLAFA, which is Forest Lake Area Fast Pitch Association, which we have been dealing with about dugouts. She advised us that their board approved contributing monies towards 2 dugouts in our park. And that would be field number 3 and 4. Am I correct, Jim? For the amount of $10,000 each. So we kind of given an estimate on this that we were looking at maybe 20,000, and the city would put in 10 and they would put in 10. But it's starting to look better every day because a man by the name of Matt Rivard, who is a resident in Columbus, says he's a resident in Columbus, is a member of the FLAFA, and he's going to do all the concrete work free of charge for the dugouts. And our tentative plan right now, or the tentative plan is, once this gets rolling, is to do 1 dugout this fall That's to put up the Century fence, the whole works. And then he was going to do the concrete on both fields this fall. And then in the spring, do the other field. CenturyLinks would do the other field. And all we have to do is come up with whatever money, plus JW, if he's got the energy and the time to put the roof on it, you know. If not, they're very cooperative, weren't they, Jack? And
They were, and I sent him that information on those estimates. I'm waiting on his reply back, so hopefully we can have a written proposal for council, hopefully by the end of June meeting, and maybe start construction on 2 dugouts for whichever field we choose is the priority by sometime maybe in September.
And also, it should be noted that Matt made a comment that he thought he could get the concrete from Kempstone free of charge. So whatever, it's cutting costs anyway. So that's looking promising. They also discussed the master plan, and that's coming along, right, Ellie? And we also talked about a couple trees that went down in the park, and Jim, and Public Director, is going to look at replacing the one, and that's the one on the line on Kettle River. The wind blew it down, one of those new ones we put up. So other than that, that was about it. It was a good park board, but the Forest Lake Fast Pitch Association really came through, I think, and took a long time, about 2 or 3 years, but looks like maybe we'll get it done. So that was my report, and now we go to Public Works report. Nope, I take that back. We go to Personnel Committee report.
We haven't met for a couple weeks, so no report.
Oh, that's great.
Or at least I haven't met. I don't know, Aaron, you met with Ellen. I don't know if there's anything you have to report.
Nothing to report. We were just maintaining, updating job descriptions, kind of some low-hanging fruit that are pending items while we awaited a formal meeting.
A real quick question off the cuff. How many, are we getting any applications to the Planning Commission?
Ooh, we do have 2, I believe.
Yes, we've had 2 applications for the Planning Commission vacancies currently. We are leaving it open until June 3rd. At that time, we'll reach out to whoever has applied, start doing interviews, and hopefully have those vacancies filled.
Thank you. Thank you. Jim, Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I only have one thing that is not on the agenda tonight. A couple of meetings back, we talked about me going out and getting a quote for a street light at the intersection of Howard Lake Drive and Kettle River. We just received that quote back from Connexus, and it came in at $1,401. So my question to the city council tonight is, do you want me to move forward and have them install that light, or do we want to wait?
What was the cost of the other one on Crossways?
$1,401.
That dollar's suspicious.
That's the only money they're making on the deal, other than the $7 a month that it costs for the electric.
Jack, do we have the money to cover those 2?
We don't have anything specifically in the budget, but I think we could probably find some way to cover those costs. We've already approved the one for Lake Drive and Crossways. I think the one at Kettle River is another one of those that's kind of a priority too, and we should probably act on that and find a way to cover that because it is a difficult intersection to find in the dark.
Okay. So anybody have any questions, discussion? We have to make a motion on this then?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve the $1,401 appropriations to the Howard Lake and Kettle River Drive for Connexus for the light at night.
It's Rob, I'll second.
We got a motion on the floor. Second it. Any discussion? Any comments? Hearing none. Jenny?
Jenny, aye.
Scott, aye.
Ron?
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
Ron, aye.
And I will throw in one other thing. With the nice weather that we've been having so far this year, it allowed us to start graveling early. We started and finished Pine Street tonight, and tomorrow we are going to start and hopefully finish North Rondo Lake Drive. And that will be the extent of what we're graveling this year because of what we did last year. Allowed us to burn 2/3 of our budget last year and pay for it this year. So we're kind of ahead of the game at this point. So that's kind of a nice feeling for us, but that's all I have. Thank you.
More time to mow lawn in the parks?
More time to mow lawn in the park.
I got a question real quick, Jim. Are you getting a lot of comments about the dust?
Every year that it's dry, you get comments. I mean, we've had years that there was no snow in February, and people call and ask when you're going to put calcium chloride down. So, I mean, it's inevitable. If it's dry, they're asking for calcium chloride. If it's wet, they're whining because their roads are rough and sloppy. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword no matter what for us either way. So, you know, just so everyone knows, we will, at this point, I've had numerous calls already about 2 applications of calcium chloride, so there may be some people that show up here. But we're going to continue to do that at the end of June as normal until we decide that we're going to try to do something different.
When you talk about 2 applications, are you talking about taking the 1 application and splitting it in 2? Or are you talking about 2 actual loads?
It would be, they wouldn't be the same, if that makes sense. So it would be a lighter rate earlier in the year and then so as a hypothetical, let's just say that this year we could have probably put some down in May, right? And then we would not do it in June. We would probably wait till the end of July or early August, and then we would put down another rate at that point. So they would maybe only be half rate the first time and, you know, depending on what it looks like, a full rate or, you know, maybe 3/4 rate or something. But I don't know what other people do. Some people do half rates, some people do 3/4 rates. I mean, it's kind of all over the map, it really is. So it's not, there's not any like real standard out there.
So we budgeted about $65,000 for it?
Yes.
So you're talking about like $32,500 for 1 load and then doing it again?
If we were going to do it twice, I would ask you for an increase of probably half. So I would ask you for about 90,000 if we were going to increase it for next year. And then do 2 applications at some rate.
So we won't do 2 applications this year because we don't have the money in the budget?
We don't have the money for it. I mean, we have, the amount of money that we have will get us 1 application.
Well, thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a proposal here for career enhancement options. That's Eleanor Hendricks. She provides human resource service to the city. They entered into a contract with us for a professional service agreement on October 30th, 2023. The second amendment to this agreement finalized the term to expire on December 31st, 2024. That contract was expired and it was intended to be continued. It was recognized that the contract wasn't reapproved. So the city is requested to renew that agreement retroactive to January 1st, 2025 and to expire on August 31st of this year. The extension would allow the completion of certain outstanding items currently in progress. Specifically, these items are the compensation and wage study, final revisions to the employee handbook, 2 final job descriptions, and a performance evaluation template. City Council is requested to consider approval of the third amendment to the original professional agreement, services agreement, as exhibited in attachment 1 that was sent out to you today by email. And there's currently about $10,000 left in the budget to cover that cost.
Any discussion?
I have a question. So we had intended to pay for DDA out of this budget. It doesn't appear that there's enough money to do both. Is that right? Because that was $11,000 for.
No, there is currently enough money to pay DDA the $11,000 and the 20. There was a $7,000 carryover from last year's budget, a $24,000 appropriation, So that gave us 31,000. So with the 11,000 taken out for DDA, that leaves us 20. We've already spent about 10, so that would leave us $10,000 to finish out.
Oh, good, okay. Thank you
So-
for that clarification. That's good news.
Anybody else have questions?
Is this in regards to the Ellen? Okay.
Yeah.
So we've previously talked about this. Okay.
Any other discussion, questions, comments? Anybody want to make a motion?
I can. So this is Janet. I move to approve the third amendment to the professional services agreement with Career Enhancement Options Incorporated as presented in attachment 1 to the staff report for this item.
This is Jenny, I second.
We have a motion that's been seconded. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Rob?
Rob, aye.
Janet, I.
Scott, aye.
Jenny, I.
Ron, aye. Now we're going to have to tell, we're going to, well, should I say the announcements first? We have City Council workshop meeting on June 3rd, 2025 at 6 p.m. We have a Planning Commission meeting on June 4th, 2025 at 6 p.m. And we have a City Council meeting on June 11th, 2025 at 6 p.m. We're now going to close the session for a closed session. So we're going to close the meeting to the public. So